Hi everyone, I'm Shikhar. I'm one of the co-founders at ConveGenius and welcome to the second episode of CG Baat 3.0. Today we're going to talk about impact, EdTech and the dwindling sense of conviction that people have on EdTech and why is it that people still believe in ConveGenius and what is it that we are doing differently. I'm sitting here with Akash. Akash has been looking at assessments from CGI for the last few years. I'm sitting here with Yashika. Yashika is one of the academic leads and has been working with children and pedagogy and academics for the last 13 years of her life. Then we have Aditya, who's one of the most upcoming faces in the world of AI. He's the one who leads all our AI efforts and has been doing a tremendous job. Then we have Prateek. Prateek is, well, everything. Prateek has been sort of at ConveGenius building almost products, new solutions for a lot of our system-related work almost on a daily basis. Then we have Aabhar. Aabhar has been leading the growth efforts, trying to understand the user and create and promote more value to our users. What is it that drew you to ConveGenius, one, and why would you choose EdTech? Like, where does that conviction come from at a time wherein EdTech is something that a lot of people don't believe in anymore because of, the kind of journey EdTech has sort of taken? It sort of went on a boom and then has sort of come down when people don't really know or understand the meaning of EdTech. So why ConveGenius first, and then what is it that drew you towards EdTech still at a time like this?
So I think I started my career in academics. I was doing research in machine learning and AI, and then I realized that I was writing a patent. Then I realized that this is something that is not bringing an impact as such for me. So I reached out to my professor and she kind of gave me the contact of my previous organization co-founders. They were their students. So I joined the talent assessment-based organization, right, where I was able to kind of create the AI-based assessments that were actually helping the organization to filter out few thousand of candidates across lakhs of candidates. But sooner I realized that I think I should move ahead and maybe work towards kind of creating the impact for the students in the learning process.
So you wanted directly to work with the students or create direct impact?
Exactly. Then the same co-founder, he was I think mentor of Jairaj for that time being. We were working on a bot called Recruitment Bot. So that's why when I joined ConveGenius after having some conversation with Jairaj, I realized, okay, that is where the recruitment was coming from. Because he was selling this idea to Jairaj also that why not build some bot site of a setting over Google search. Yeah. That was the idea that he was talking to Jairaj onto. So he got me in touch with Jairaj. I seriously didn't talk to Jairaj for that. He was talking on behalf of me to Jairaj कि भाई ये बंदा चला जाएगा, इसको hire कर ले, तो कर रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा है. So suddenly I got a call and I joined ConveGenius. But before that, like the image of EdTech for me was like people were only digitizing the traditional educational process. Yeah. But what I've seen at ConveGenius, and that is the example, like the SIF suite sort of series of bot that we have launched, right? That was an example that me, Arnav and Jairaj met for like 3 hours and we think of let's do something with ChatGPT quickly. And within like 7 days, we were able to launch a bot quickly. That is where I realized that like it is beyond just digitizing the traditional education processes. I think it is more around the personalization and creating actual impact for the students. And especially being the social entrepreneur in this area, right? The ConveGenius is really doing great on that.
So picking from where he sort of has ended, and we were talking about it in our last podcast also, that, and probably I'll ask some of you guys because you work with the whole system. We were talking about EdTech as a student or a learner-centric tool versus a system-centric tool. Is ConveGenius thriving because it has a slightly more broader lens on EdTech than just being a learner-centric company? Because with the kind of constraints that we work with on the ground, a strictly learner-centric approach might not have gone too far, right? Because we don't have electricity, we don't have internet, we don't have a lot of things to work with on the ground. So since you guys both work in the ecosystem a lot, what are your views on EdTech as a learner-centric approach versus a system-centric approach? What is your conviction? Where does your conviction come from? Or is there maybe a third lens?
Yeah, no, I think both for me, because I think the problem statement we are dealing with is also, if I see state governments as a distribution machinery, they have to also deliver learning to everyone compared to say a traditional bottom-up private sector edtech which is direct to consumer can sort of take that route. Here a lot of narrative of how does the state deliver better. There is of course a student facing narrative, but there is also this narrative of how does the state deliver better learning outcomes. Now that can happen through more teacher attendance, more teacher availability. Learning is just, and that's some of the conversations we have also been having, right? Learning is probably the most important part, but just one part of it. And just tying back to the earlier question, I think my own conviction has kind of arisen from the fact that I see these three things: ed, tech and data. Been in places which have only done ed, right? I see places which only do tech, right? They don't have an ed angle to it. Data generally is not used by anyone. So I think we are at a, right, if we look at all the offerings together, it's a very unique vantage point to be able to leverage data, build good tech and also bring in a very solid ed or academic lens. And from my experience of working with governments, I think it's like someone says, it's like an elephant. You're moving an elephant. You need to have that vantage point of all three things together to be able to move something like that. So yeah, to the question, I think the system centric lens is very important according to me, and is one of the key motivators for me also to kind of work here, because I think without it, enabling holistic learning is not going to happen.
Is that your conviction too?
Well, so I have to give some background on what I was doing before this. So I've spent almost a decade mostly in the non-profit space, working with the government in system change initiatives, but focusing largely employability. So before CG, I was not even in India. So I was in Singapore for 6 years. I was running a global non-profit, and we didn't have a lot of tech, but we had what we would call as methodology, right? So we had a methodology which was tried, tested, struggling to scale, right? So I think two things I noticed there, which kind of became fuel for me to eventually sort of want to come back to India and work in EdTech or K-12 space in that sense. Number one is when we were hit with COVID, and a lot of our work transformed from helping college graduates to get into jobs to suddenly mid-careerist people, reskilling them, those who have lost their jobs due to COVID or even automation. And how do you train a 40-year-old to become a data analyst or a software engineer, which were the jobs of the future, or at least the jobs that were in demand. And then fundamentally what we understood is that the reason that change is so difficult, the root cause lies in the education system. The root cause lies in the education system that these people went through, right? Even when you look at, let's say Singapore being such a developed nation, until very recently, they had a very rigid, way of teaching people. So if you want to become a machinist, you'll only learn about machines. There's no critical core skills that you would have really developed. So tomorrow suddenly your machines are obsolete. You can't really pick up something else because you've been so sort of conditioned in one thing. So that was an interesting thing that everywhere we were getting stuck. The directions are pointing towards it is starting at education. It is starting in school. So how do you change the way people learn in the school more fundamentally? So that's the first part of it. The second is where the technology comes in. So I worked at one organization for 7 years where we did wonderful proof of concepts of new methodologies, showed that how we can make skilling demand-led, all of that, right? But we just couldn't scale. And that scalability was actually in a way hampered because we couldn't give governments who had the right intent but did not have the right tools, right? So we would go and tell that this is the right way to do it. And they'll be like, I agree, but I can't get it done. Can you help us? And of course, we would go and do the trainings and SOPs and everything you can think of, but all programmatic, right? It would still be so dependent on people, so dependent on the processes that were there. We talk about teacher resistance, etc. We face that because we would work with lecturers in polytechnics who would be like, how can you teach me how to better train someone in.
So you come from the same background, just different actors.
Just different actors, right? So for me, that's why tech was a very important, piece of the puzzle that I felt like I didn't know what is the right tech or what would work, but I knew it couldn't happen without tech. right? And that's kind of when I decided to come back to India. And of course, I was talking to all of you guys and considering like what ConveGenius does. That sort of combination that is tech and government sort of working together, that was really, even now, that drives me. So how do you do systems change? How do you enable system change? By actually sort of fueling at the very sort of source where this change begins, in a way. So that's kind of my argument. And I think just to answer your question, it's about making the system learner-centric, right? So we have to work with the system to make it learner-centric, make it learning-centric, in a way. And that's what excites me.
That's that's very well put. Making the system learning-centric, obviously, like, because you've gone through the whole process and, you have a PhD in academics and all of that shebang that you have. Tell me, what do you, being in the system for so many years and now sort of coming at the doorstep of technology, how do you feel that a system that has been built over, that is literally flowing to us, that's a legacy system, how can actually that system sort of modify itself or adjust itself to this whole tech wave that is coming the way and still not lose the learning centricity? Because what I'm seeing a lot around also is that in an attempt to sort of, get technology savvy and, get more and more tech and faster solutions, a lot of people, and sometimes us also, we're losing perspective of the learner. We're losing perspective of what is important. I'm not saying that other things are not, but at the end of the day, because the system has to eventually become learner-centric, how do you see that happening around you, or what is it that you wish could happen to make it more learner-centric?
So if I see how the system has been evolving, or at times I would not say it has been a progression, because system also is working in a intermittent way. There are like policy, the first policy, if I talk about the education policy, that was the first NCF came in 2005. We still have states which haven't been able to implement that, the learnings that were there in NCF 2005. So somewhere, if we look at how India is operating as a country, we do not have the same set of resources, even in terms of people who can implement it at state level, at district level, at school level. So all three levels we don't have. You can have a official who has a vision, but we don't have teachers who are empowered to translate that vision into school. So, and that's where technology, like sometimes when people say that why do you want to do lesson plans through tech? Why do you want to do that? So, the only thing is that we at least have some kind of a standardized input that goes into the class, because the system that we are in, it is always like it's a human-centric system. Whether it is teacher, official, students, there is nothing which can govern a standardization. But what we are driving towards is a standardized learning. We want all children to be at par, because everything when they come to the university level, that is a cusp. When they move from school to university, then that state differences, everything ends there. Then that playground has to be even for all.
Are you saying that the input has to be standardized so that then teachers can personalize it and then use it on the ground?
And right now, even if we say that textbooks are not prescriptive, or we say pedagogy is not prescriptive, which we totally understand. Every human would have a different way of dealing with the concept. But what are we dealing with? How are we assessing it? Right now, when we look at Vidya Samiksha Kendras, at least we know that in every state what is happening at every district, at every school level. And that kind of a data point tells us that what is the intervention has to be designed in a way. Right now, whenever the system was working, it is designing the policy which has to be implemented across. It has been giving funds which have to, the similar kind of funds are being sent for the similar things, whereas the same kind of intervention is not needed.
So I will sort of go back a little, because I think you've sort of picked up, I would say, a very inflammable part of the discussion, which is the education part of it, the academics part of it, right? Because most people, at least that I talk to or that I hear about, the belief of technology and education working together has sort of almost like diminished. People are like, let's just invest in teachers. People are like, let's just invest in infrastructure. Let's just get tech to do a little bit of whatever they can do. As an educator who probably has worked in larger systems and also observed larger systems, what is it that ConveGenius is doing that sort of brings you back that conviction that yes, tech can and tech will eventually.
So what Akash said, like bringing the change in the system, because we are working with the learners, but we are working with the system first. So every policy, every systemic change that has to be driven, the benefits of it goes to the children or the learners. But when you actually work directly with learner, then it has to be, a learner has to motivate it to actually come to your solution. Then second thing is that learners should have access, but how that access is being given, that access is a system access.
Yeah, I'm going to push you a little bit there. So yes, we're saying that, we need to work in the system, we need to work on the system. What I'm asking you is, probably as the only person here who has any academic training, what is it that you would like technology to do? And also I want to push there a little bit, because that creates a good segue for the next elephant in the room, which is AI, right? We keep talking about AI. So what is it that, according to you, I'm sure when you were sort of studying or going through this whole academic training, there were things that you felt you could do in a classroom. You personally could go and do in the classroom. Now we want to use technology to be able to replicate thousands of Yashika on the ground, right? What, according to you, can we do to be able to do that for the learner from a pedagogical learning, student-centric aspect?
If you just look at personalized adaptive learning, just the simple component that we work on, or the most complex component also.
It's actually not simple
at all. So it's the most complex component that we work on, and we have been talking in pedagogy about individualized learning cycles. We have been talking about that every child has their own learning curve. But as a teacher, in the classroom, dealing with 45 students, I've never been able to do a scaffolded learning for individual children in the classroom, which technology enables me to do. And then also, like we talk about diagnostics. When I conduct a test and give back to the students, as a teacher, I'm just marking that what are the things that they have not performed well. I'm not able to go back to the concepts that individual students need to deal with. And that is what technology is enabling us to do. If my 45 students have different learning cycles and they are able to follow their own learning paths within the same classroom, there is no bigger win than that for me.
Okay, and again, pushing you a little bit, but like a lot of organizations that came as EdTech players in the last 5 years, and this any of you can pick, because I'm sure we are all aware of the players, and especially you, Aabhar, since you worked with a lot of these larger organizations, you were sort of working towards getting these children on these platforms, right? What is it that they missed out? What is it that did not work? Because I'm sure they started with the same intention of providing, personalized adaptive, scaffolded lessons for every child. What do we think went wrong with all of these organizations?
The biggest mistake, in my opinion, without getting into finer details, is growth for the sake of growth. Because that's the motto of a cancer cell. If you want to grow for the sake of growth, that's only one thing that grows for the sake of growth.
It's quite dark, but true.
So that's what happened with these guys, for sure. Whether that was because of investor pressure or whatever, I don't know. And essentially what that led to is that you forget your core purpose, which is to be learner-centric or learning-centric. And you start doing stuff to make ends meet, obviously, which is... And when you start making ends meet, then you start getting swayed and you keep forgetting that. So I think that's what happened with those organizations.
So it's a business problem rather than a...
Yeah, because problem. I think from what I remember, and this is in terms of EdTech experience, this is my first. But what I've understood from large organizations who were consumer tech organizations, when you start going after users without really having a value proposition for that segment of users,
right,
you are essentially betraying your core user base. You are bringing more people into the house who do not belong in this house. And then you have less attention to pay to the people who were actually
a part of the
house. So that happened with a lot of OTTs also, which is why at one point there were 40 OTTs in India. Today, kitna hai? 4-5 hai.
So then my question to you then is that what do you think, because your job is to actually bring in the right users back onto the platform, what do you think you are doing differently to sort of, for our users, which are students and teachers, that these consumer tech organizations sort of missed in the first wave?
Firstly, like I mentioned, being obsessed by the scale of numbers is not entirely correct. Being obsessed about the quality of the metric is... So for example, can I get, instead of 100 users a month, can I suddenly scale to 5,000 users a month? Usse better hai, can I get 150, but those next 50 are really going to stick on because I will have exactly what they want. That is the difference in approach. And that is how it translates into acquisition strategies, retention strategies, engagement strategies. I don't want them to interact just because I want them to spend more time.
Right.
I want them to interact because they feel pulled towards it, and that's how the entire
So essentially value discovery
and removing friction and all of that.
Value discovery is basically your growth mantra for what you are doing
Yes.
in content.
Yes.
Just slightly going back again, picking up from what Yashika said about using technology for scaffolded or personalized learning, right? I know there are systems or there are products that have been able to crack it to some extent using technology. They're expensive products, things that we can't deploy for 150 million children, so on and so forth. How do we see technology and AI? And this is for you more, Aditya. Yashika is basically putting up an expectation as an educator that, hey, you know what, in the next 5 years, maybe I want every child to have a personalized, scaffolded journey for learning. And maybe the teacher's role is, more of creating the right environment, more of motivation, all of that. Do you think we are at a place in the development of AI wherein the kind of users that we work with, the kind of students that we work with, will be able to get there in the next 5 years? And what kind of solutioning would you want to sort of push this as a product, let's say, for 5 years from now?
I think what we are imagining now for 5 years and what we are imagining back then when you started working on PAL, right? We were not in the space like we want to build a personalized solution. We want to, but by technology it was not happening as such. But through the years we have realized that okay, we can do it. So I think I still see an opportunity that AI could help you building a low-cost solution that could give you a most personalized experience to students. And how it would help, I'm still not sure that how the technology would come along from the AI perspective, definitely, right? Because things are evolving very fast. The way the LLMs have kind of changed the entire space throughout that, how the thing has to be developed. So I think in the coming years, definitely, you will see a more better personalized experience. But what I think is, still you will not be able to replace teachers as such using AI. AI could only help teachers in kind of delivering a more personalized experience, but the kind of mentoring and the empathy that you have to show towards students, that is something that would come from teachers itself. I'm not sure I was able to answer the question.
So I think my view is before using tech and AI for delivery, I think it probably would get used more in understanding the learner better.
Right.
I think our understanding of a learner, which obviously is humanly not possible to understand at that level when you are teaching for a larger class, but can the technology, and the way we collect data through various systems and even PAL, when we are able to even track, every motion of the child, will that data eventually be rich enough for us to profile different learning patterns and learning preferences, right? Which then delivery comes much later. I think the first problem that I think technology should solve and can solve is understanding that learner a lot better. And instead of probably having, I don't know the exact models we use today, but I'm sure whatever models they are able to sort of profile the learners into very broad categories, right? Can there be finer categories of profiling, which then eventually is a question of how to address those profiles and deliver to those profiles specifically, right? So that is the role I feel the technology could play with massive data collection and
so basically understanding the student more, sort of figuring out what the student
what works, what doesn't. And I think this has largely happened for all of us, right?
Yeah,
when the search engines have understood us, there's so many systems that are watching us all the time.
Yeah.
So can that level of understanding be created even from a learning lens
while safeguarding the interest
of the child? So can we do that is probably the challenge that I would be looking forward to from a
And what is that one thing that you think ConveGenius is doing that gives you that hope that, hey, you know what, we're still figuring it out for ourselves, but yes, this is that one place that will eventually. What is that one thing or one thing that, you're building two things every day. Tell me one thing that you really believe in that is going to work for students.
So I think first of all, I'm going to talk less about technology, more about the attitude here. Yeah. The attitude is not know-it-all. Attitude is that learning. I think one word that I can use is we try to build empathy in our solutions, right? So how do we empathize with the learner and the teacher and the system in general? So I think the products that we are today building, I think the new PAL version that we are working on, if we are able to collect richer data, because we need to go deeper with with less volume before we can actually kind of look at a scaled solution, right? We have a lot of solutions where we are working at a scale, but they are more of touch and go, right? But I think the more we are working on something where we can go deeper and probably also go beyond academic learning. That is something that I would hope, right? If I'm able to think of profiling that way, then that is the direction I see some hope, really. Because end of the day, one of the biggest challenge that where I come from is that what will this person make use of the education that they are getting? Is that going to be something that the person can build a life on, right? And a lot of those things may not be academic or may not be measurable academically in that sense, right? So are we able to develop tools to measure these things as well, right? Measure soft skills, critical core skills, problem solving, things that sort of stay at a fundamental layer. I think that attempt is definitely worth exploring further,
or getting to know the student a little bit more through measurement. And that's a segue for what CGI does and the kind of measuring capabilities that we have. Do you think we are building up our capacity, or we're trying to create ways of getting to know the user a little bit more through our assessments? What do you think about what CGI does and what kind of impact it creates? And also, is measurement even like the way we do it now? Is that even a way that would probably work in EdTech? For me, that is the biggest question that I have. I did not take a test for Instagram. I did not take a test for Facebook. I did not take a test for any, or even using my phone, right? But they know everything about me. They know how smart I am. They know what vacations I will take. They know everything about me. What is your thinking on how measurement should probably be done for a student? Should it be the way it is done right now, which is fairly invasive, or should it be should it evolve? Maybe AI can sort of play a role in that, and sort of can we evolve our measurements techniques in a way that it doesn't have to be invasive for the student?
I think firstly, building on Prateek's point, I think the need for measurement and the need for profiling, I also kind of feel, I think that is super critical. And one more thing which I feel is we are quite well placed to be able to do that, because conventional challenge with government setups is they're very top down. They'll get a priority, they'll want to launch it, they'll roll it out, compared to say a usual product which is built very bottom up, right? It's tested with 100 users, iterations are done, right? The pressure to scale very fast or directly launch at scale also many a times is there in the government. While that's a operational reality which we balance out, but at the same time things like PAL, where we are trying to get deep with just 1,000 students, right? Things like those, I think, are both an opportunity and a place where we should invest quite a lot more in to realize patterns of student learning, which kind of brings me then to measurement. I think at a very basic level, before even going into measuring things like skills and attitudes, even with just measuring mastery of learning outcomes, mathematical concepts, there's a lot more scope to bring in measurement techniques, right? Because currently it's, again, right, one thing which CGI historically has done, and of course in other impact evaluation also happens, is use of item response theory, use of things like item difficulties and where students are with regards to certain competencies, which in my mind is the foundation for a personalized learning journey, right? If I'm not able to place a student somewhere, then how do I even design that learning journey? And to even place that student, how do I do it in the most reliable manner? That's where I think measurement comes in and becomes very, very important. To your other point, yes, there is a scope for a lot of innovation and evolution within measurement itself, but I still feel that's more towards measuring skills. Like an example which I think was one firm in the US, they just get students to play games, right? It's a lot of games on strategy, negotiation, games like Age of Empires, if someone is paid, right? So, and through decisions the student makes or the choices a student is taking in those, you can give a lot of critical feedback.
Right.
Although I still feel that ties more to the 21st century skills kind of things. I still feel core foundational academic concepts may bringing in a lens of measurement is important, is needed, and is still very underutilized.
Very underutilized. Also, the kind of problems that we try to solve, these are not problems in isolation. Like, and it's very easy to solve for PAL for 100 students. It's very easy to solve for a lot of these problems for 100 students, but we're talking about millions of students. The challenges, the kind of things that you deploy in the ground are just...
And honestly, some of the skills that we talk about need not be taught only in a classroom, right? So for a child who is probably, balancing a part-time, like a part-time job somewhere with the parent, and then, having to figure out the right time to come to the school. Like, there's a lot of problem solving in their life that's happening, right? And we all know, I think from an academic perspective, none of these problem solving learnings get concretized without a proper debriefing that happens. So it's also about like how do we kind of merge the child's sort of off school and on school experiences together, because we can't. I think that's where SwiftChat is a wonderful sort of platform which goes beyond the school in a way.
So let me ask you then, if you were to think of the future of SwiftChat, and if you were to think it across pillars of student learning, system sort of problem solving and understanding the user more deeply, and AI, of course, if you were to sort of build a future for SwiftChat around these 4-5 pillars, what would it look like? What would be the utopian future of SwiftChat look like to you?
My utopian vision for SwiftChat is it should be a lifelong learning buddy on demand. I think that's the part of SwiftChat which is very unique, which is I don't need to use it every day, but it's there. And when I need it, I think of it first. And I don't need to stop at school. I can go beyond that. I can continue using SwiftChat for my counselings or my looking for higher education or probably even jobs in future. So that is, and if I'm looking at Swiftverse as a whole, if SwiftPal, the product, or the Swift School products is able to learn enough about me through a deeper intervention and able to offer on-demand support as and when I need it through SwiftChat, because SwiftChat is with me all the time versus the other things which I might not be carrying with me. So for me, that's the utopian vision. Like, can I really be a Sarthi for a child throughout the life?
And do you think that is something AI can deliver?
In the long run, yes, it could.
And how far along in that journey do you think we are? Especially for our scale. Say, I mean, again, probably doing it for 100 students is much simpler, and its cost is not a constraint, devices are not a constraint and all of that. But for our context, if I were to sort of represent the 150 million students that we sort of work with, how soon do you think we can launch something like a SwiftChat Sarthi for them to be a lifelong friend for them?
I think if we are able to crack the personalization a bit for them, not in terms of just the assessments, but also the other activities that they do around. Just for grading them on a scale and bringing them to ranked, right? There are a lot of other behavioral attitudes that they learn throughout their school life or a college life. If we can personalize those experiences for them and let them learn through those experiences and grow, right? And that is something like AI probably cannot do now, because since these guys talk about data, and there are a lot of patterns that we think that could work, but AI might not be able to learn at today's stage, right? It would take a lot of time for the AI to even learn those patterns. Once it is able to learn those patterns really well, to some extent, yes, we'll be able to achieve that Sarthi level of adaptiveness or the personalization for every student. And I think it would not stick to a student maybe. It might go beyond students, maybe to teachers and the administrator, and especially the parents also. Parents could also have an assistant that what should I do so that my students, so that my children could kind of grow in their life, right? Not in just of education, but other fields as well. I think we have also started thinking of sports VSK kind of a thing, right?
Sports VSK, skilling VSK, a lot of these things.
Because this is a realization that has come to parents' mind as well through system. Right. And since this is happening, if we can understand this need from parents and fulfill it for students, right, we might be able to create an ecosystem for them on demand, as Prateek said.
So thinking about like an on-demand, almost like a genie, right? Whenever you need this person, this is right there for you. What is it about our students that we understand right now? 100% surety, because you're somebody who looks at data in trying to analyze their behavior, the patterns that you see in behavior, and sort of trying to communicate with them in a language that they will understand to express our value proposition to them, right? So, what is it that we have understood about our students? जो भी है मतलब whatever the truth is, even if it is the hard reality where we think our students are, what is that one or two truths that we know about us?
Something really unique about our audience set is that they don't have their own devices.
Yeah.
Most of them don't. Half of the stuff that they do on SwiftChat is from the teacher's device, the other half they do on the parent's device.
Yeah.
Imagine this is like Ramayana playing on your neighborhood TV and everybody is going there and watching Ramayana. Netflix से ऐसा नहीं करते, लेकिन यहाँ पे unique है ये बहुत ज़्यादा.
Okay.
So that is very unique about our students, which is why their usage is also very sporadic.
Okay.
Which is why in AP you'll find that the usage is not sporadic.
Yeah.
They have their own devices that were seeded. So their usage is much more consistent, much regular, much more per capita and everything, as compared to a UP or a Uttarakhand guy जिसका usage irregular होता है.
Device नहीं है.
हाँ, क्योंकि device नहीं है और चलो connectivity भी नहीं है.
But do you think, then my question would be, as probably just sort of like thinking about it from an outsider's lens, although very hard, but I'm still thinking about it. Do you think that with SwiftChat, and that's always a question that hangs in my head, do you think with SwiftChat we have cracked the value proposition to some extent for our students? Because there is obviously a drive the students have to sort of find a device and do something with it, right? So are we on our way to sort of cracking value for SwiftChat? Do you feel that?
Absolutely I do. For the 2 million devices that we have and for the approximately 6-7 million active users across profiles that we have, you'll see that non-VSK usage is a significant part, which means that बाद वो आए, उन्होंने फिर games and sports quiz भी किया, movies and cartoons quiz भी किया, live quiz भी किया. Problem is we judge it against their VSK usage, which is anyways very high.
Yeah.
But they still come back, then they engage with light-hearted, fun learning activities.
Yeah.
So directionally, it has shown us that we did something right.
Yeah.
How do we scale that value?
Right. Looking at user data for the last 1 year, what are some of the most funny things that you've seen from the data? Of things that, like, how is this possible? But we'll come back to that. Sure. I just want to sort of bring the question back to you, Yashika. So we're essentially saying that, and I want to pick your brain a little bit from an educator's lens, right? Because whenever I think of SwiftChat, I have been unable to think of it as a structured learning. Well, there is a little bit of a teacher inside me, because I've also taught in the classroom for a very long time. There's a little bit of a teacher inside me that is always skeptical of SwiftChat to be used as a, you know, a tool that can be used for structured, scaffolded learning, etc., etc. So what would your message be to a teacher who actually wants to use it not just for themselves but also for the students that they have in the classroom about SwiftChat?
Two things. When Prateek was talking about his like utopic idea about SwiftChat, I was like stuck with one thing. That is like we are not seeing this from a researcher's lens. Like if we look at any of the learning theory or cognitive learning theories that we are working on right now, Piaget being the biggest, Piaget worked on 4 children and gave a theory. Vygotsky, or when we talk about social constructivist theory, it is based on a certain assumption. None of these cognitive theories are actually based on data. And we still believe in these theories, implement that in classroom, divide the children into group, whether they are kinesthetic learners, auditory learners, or they are visual learners. And also the fact that the learning happens in this stages form. It's a pre-operational, concrete operational, or whatever stages. We do that. And if we look at SwiftChat right now, the amount of data that it is giving us, it's like a revision of a learning theory that can be done.
So we are in a better position to come up with a learning theory than anybody else.
And that's something that has been in my mind since the time I've been looking at data. Right. Because like none of the cognitive theory is actually based on data. Every learning theory is based on certain axioms that we think about learning. Right. We don't even look at Like that's why neuroscientists look at learning in a different way than a cognitive scientist. But we are at that cusp where we can bring cognitive scientists and neuroscientists together and bring up a learning theory.
Which is what we're trying to attempt with PAL 2.5, wherein there's a whole psyche side of learning that we're trying to sort of address. Obviously, it's something that will require a lot of modeling and AI and all of that, but we're sort of also going in that direction of thinking about learning. And this is one recent realization that I've had in the last 3 years, 2 years, is that especially for us, I'm not thinking of myself as a teacher in a classroom, having a lot of control of, students right in front of me and all of that. If I think of it as an educator's lens, I have realized that learning in isolation can never work. If I cannot, in this day and age, if I cannot keep you engaged, I can't, especially with a child, learning and students do exhibit like random behavior that we can't control from a platform. So my strong belief is that if AI and everything that we have to offer can be used productively to actually engage the child, and then we think of learning as a thread parallel to engagement is the only way possibly to actually crack learning.
Correct. And when you asked about the teacher, and there was one thing that like we don't set it as a narrative, that AI, as like said rightly, that it is not that we are not trying to replace the teacher. So it's like the AI is actually the buddy that teacher needs. We are not building that narrative that AI is that buddy that teacher needs. If teacher is a classroom facilitator, AI is teacher's facilitator. Because as teacher, we are trying to draw patterns. We are trying to do that grouping in classroom. But then we don't know like how those groupings are actually working. But with AI, we exactly know how those groups can be devised, whether those groups will work, whether that would be folded or not. But we are always having this conversation that AI might replace the teacher. We are not, like, that is where we need to change this conversation, that AI is teacher's facilitator.
Right.
Because if you really want to have that pedagogy in the classroom, that is data driven, that tells you how exactly each of your student is governing. You have it at like, you just need to open your phone. That's where your data is. And none of the teacher, if the thing is that if she's just spending a minute or two on it, teacher would do it. Because that intent is there. The only thing is that effort. If the AI can reduce that effort for that teacher, why would she not?
Recognize patterns and
correct.
Inform
and then informed groups formation, informed scaffolded learning. Actually, if I'm able to know, okay, this is like, these are the concepts that I need to review. Because if we ask a teacher what are the concepts that children are not able to do, they give a list of difficult topics, which might not be difficult for all the students. And those are again historically built, but children have changed. Every 5 years, how our brain functions changes.
So you think AI can sort of be somebody who sort of detects these patterns and sort of keep the teachers on their toes about what's happening in the classroom, etc. And talking about patterns, what are those crazy patterns that we've sort of seen from our own data from SwiftChat? Student data from SwiftChat. Some unexplainable behavior, things that we can't wrap our head around.
Those really happen almost every other day, but not in terms of segmentation of users or anything, but the kind of content that they sometimes respond to can't really make sense of it.
I remember talent examination. So there was a talent examination test that we conducted through weekly practice, and we took data from Aabhar's team. The kind of answers to मैं उत्तर नहीं दूंगा, मुझे स्कॉलरशिप नहीं चाहिए, आप जाइए तेल लेने. I was like, okay.
You sat and read it.
Because weekly practice data don't get collated, and we had to give them top 100 students whom they can give scholarships. So I had to actually read every line to find that set of 100 students. So I was like, okay.
And obviously, I love you, Priya. That's a common one.
Oh, is it?
Oh, there are a lot of love letters. There are a lot of love letters and responses.
Responses aside, but like, what is the behavior or the usage pattern? Like, one good insight for me at least, and I know you shared this with me a few months back, was that, please do not always assume that we're not delivering value, because I usually panic about value and I'm like, Aabhar, hum kuch nahi kar rahe, hame kuch aur karna chahiye. And he's like, please do not assume that we're not delivering value, because our students really don't have devices. The ones who do have devices, their patterns are very different. Are there any other meaningful patterns that you have that you would probably make sense for you to share with the others?
So we tried to segment people basis their frequency of app launch and basis the number of conversations. So एक axis पे frequency of app launch था, एक axis पे number of conversations per month for that user, for that device. And we realized, and हमने कहा segment करते हैं, 6 डब्बे बनेंगे, then we'll see किसको कैसे categorize करना है. And we found out that there was a significant chunk of 18% of those kids who were like, जिनको हमने बोला कि ये फ्रंट बेंचर है भाई, ये सारे क्विज और ये रिवॉर्ड्स और एंगेज में भी सबसे ज्यादा करते हैं. तो ये खिलाड़ी लोग हरफन वाला लोग हैं, पढ़ाई भी तेज और खेलकूद भी तेज, और वैसे ही हमें बैक बेंचर भी मिले जो कि इतनी बार ऐप लॉन्च करते हैं, कुछ नहीं करते. नहीं, वो अपसर्च के अंदर जाके यूट्यूब के थ्रू जाके यूट्यूब जाते हैं. So, मैंने कहा ये देखो, ये पर्सोना है, ये अपना है पीछे बैठने वाला राजू और ये आगे बैठने वाला रैंचो.
दिमाग दोनों लगा रहे.
So, ऐसे बहुत आते हैं साइड से. जैसे एक दिन हमने कंटेंट में we were deciding कि what are the upcoming events, the strategy that we have, let's tether every communication to an upcoming event. तो अभी किसी हफ्ता इवेंट होता ही नहीं कुछ. एक दिन वर्ल्ड स्नेक डे था. हमने कहा चलो कुछ नहीं है, इसी पे करके देखते हैं. You won't believe how it blew up on competition zone. On competition zone, snake day के
entries. Is it a day for snake lovers or is it?
It is in commemoration of snakes for whatever reason. I don't. It's not Indian day.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
So it must be wildlife वाला day. हाँ. So then I spoke to somebody from the on-ground team. मैंने कहा ये कैसे है? बोला maybe they have a religious connotation. कि यार सांप का है तो करना ही चाहिए. तो मैंने कहा पता नहीं, but this really blew up.
ये भी हो सकता है कि they might not have seen world snakes day in any other platform.
हाँ. बोला कि हाँ ये niche लेके आया मेरे लिए.
I'm sure there are more such
yeah,
from the ground about
Let's
it.
find a day for every day. There must be something happening.
No, but like our initial hypothesis about the things that they would like, Bollywood, cricket, these things we know. So every time we want to give them a break from their regular learning. If you're asking them about Bollywood, it will just blow up. Cricket will blow up. Football has also started picking up for some reason.
Yes.
That's also doing quite well.
Similar thing happened with tennis. I thought it's such a premium sort of a game. जब Wimbledon आया तो हमने we integrated tennis का sports API into cricket live.
Yeah.
कि देखते हैं experiment करते हैं. I had a prejudice. मैंने कहा कि tennis वैसे ही बहुत कम लोग देखते हैं. सब metro tier 1 वाले देखते हैं. उसमें भी उन्होंने considerable response दिया. So a lot of things that we assume are not really.
So basically, what you were saying about getting to know our user, I think that's really critical for us because all our assumptions sometimes just go down the drain and we just get unexpected responses.
I want to introduce one dimension which is coming up in some of our internal discussions, but we haven't probably thought about this. Is we probably are limited right now by our device, right? So. We work with the system, etc. I think IoT is the next sort of technology stack in how can we work with certain hardwares in the system to help inform us about the child, because we cannot really peep into something when something is not on, right? But we are getting, I mean, we talked about sports VSK, that's an example where we might be looking at video footages and making sense out of that. So I think there will be a place where we can actually collaborate a lot more from a software and a hardware perspective. Today we are kind of we're not making our own hardware in a way, nor are we defining our hardware to some extent, right? We're going with what's available. But eventually, I think there'll be a world where we might have to influence the hardware also to make the most out of what we really want to do.
What about you, Yashika? What is it that your team calls you behind your back?
Oh, they call me Mama.
Mama. Why do they call you Mama?
Because it just happened that I have all women in my team. So if they're traveling at night, I ask them to message me once they reach.
Yes, I understand. I also got that vibe a lot when I remember you were unwell and you were working from home for a week or two, and we were on a call at your home. Like we were on a call, you and Shvangi were on a call. You were at home, and I could see all these girls sitting behind, and I was like, "I'm sorry, what is going on?" This is the first person that I've seen who's actually flipped the work from home. You made your home your workplace.
Yeah, my team was sitting with me at my home.
Yeah, they were sitting at.
They came to office and they called me, "Can we come and see you?" I said yes.
I want to understand a little bit more about each of you, like how you handle your team, because you guys are also fairly new into the system. So what is the leadership style that you saw was going around, and what is your flavor of leadership style? How, does that work for you, or you have your own leadership style in which you're sort of growing up your team? So a little bit more about your teams, your leadership style, and what you think is the unique CG style, and have you or have you not, or will you not adapt to that?
So a lot of people in my team I was able to bring from other teams because my product delivery didn't sort of exist before I came. Sahib was the first person. Literally, Sahib and me were just in the team, and so then now we have 20 plus in product delivery and another 20 people in insights. So totally about 40 people. We also debate about what exactly product delivery means. So maybe we should call ourselves solution delivery, but okay, we'll figure that out. In terms of, I think, what has worked well so far, and I think my team will also sort of agree with this broadly, is I think we've realized very early on that there's a lot of chaos that product delivery has to absorb. It can come from any direction. Kind of sit at that sort of a place where we are the next step for a lot of people in the organization and external, right? So we are literally one arm's length from so many different stakeholders. So I think the first thing was that I felt was helpful is to give that clarity to the team at least as to what they need to work on. There could be so much of noise outside of them. How do you make sure that everyone is focused on a few things on a week-on-week basis or sprint-on-sprint basis? I think that is something that I started, and I'm now seeing a lot of people kind of asking for that clarity, right? Which was initially assumed that clarity can never be achieved. So let's just assume that I have to work on everything and let's just do it, right? Then naturally the output suffered. Obviously, nothing would get done, right? And I think now we are in a place where every week we take stock of what we will always have to let go of certain things, and that's a reality we've accepted. And we are able to then there are a few of us who handle the noise completely. So our 100% role, my 100% role is handling the noise, right? So that the team has the clarity and they are able to focus and get things done. I think that model has worked a lot, worked well, and I think this is also come out.
And this process of building like starting from a 2 people team to sort of building like a 40 people team, what are some of those most fun moments that you've had? What are some of the most interesting people that you've hired?
Well, I think starting with Sahib, I did not hire him. He was already part of CG. And
was he?
I thought Sahib was actually in Himachal. He was the DTU, and we were also attempting to launch Punjab at that time, which he was also part of. So I learned a lot from him in terms of how the ecosystem works and what are the different stakeholders when I came in. So when he Shashank basically said that he'll be a great asset for product delivery, and now all of us see that. All of us work with Sahib, right? Everyone here has worked with Sahib. So I think when we started off, it was a lot in terms of defining what we do, because work was happening, right, even before product delivery. So it was naturally we were kind of stepping into people's so-called like what they were otherwise doing, and so we had to define that very well and also build that trust that look, we will get this done, right? So that took some time. I think Sahib played a critical role, and eventually, like when we launched our OCR pilot, he was in like full-blown top gear of Sahib, and now we we'll see that happening more often. And I think after that we expanded the team. I think we got in the whole product, the product lens also. We had to hire a lot of product managers. So we hired certain senior people here at the Central. So we hired Vidhi, Neha. These are people who recently joined us. We also got in new products that we never thought. I think before 6 months ago we didn't know we would be working on something like an MIS, which we are now building. As well as we're building a lot of mini apps within the product delivery. So the original idea of product delivery was a lot more on working on template bots and working on those solutions. But when we are expanding, then we hired people who are very different, who are coming from core product experience. Then we also had like veterans who had actually worked building the bots, the first set of bots, like Satyanshu, who was in Gujarat, and he kind of came to center. So I think everyone has played a role in terms of defining what we do today and a lot of processes that we do today. And a big step that enabled is that every week checkout that we used to do. Like every week, irrespective of where we were, I would be so many times taking the call from the airport, but we will all be there at 3 p.m. Friday just chit chat, right? So we'll come to share what happened, how am I feeling, what's
Tell
going
us
on.
gossip from that chit chat.
Well, gossip.
I'm sure there's a lot of gossip from that chit chat.
I think, not so much of gossip, but just sort of, I feel more of just feeling for each other.
Frustration,
feeling for each other.
Sure.
Like everyone, almost every call, they would say, "Oh, I thought I was alone.
Yeah.
I was the only one who was feeling this way." Right?
Yeah.
And suddenly that group grew, right? So initially we were just 5-6 of us, and then that grew to like almost 18 people. Now 1 hour is not enough for us, and everyone has to speak, right? So we kind of make everyone talk. And
Product delivery for us has been a great cushion between the product and the business team, and when I say cushion, I literally mean it, because a lot of things get thrown at product delivery that we don't get to hear because you have to listen to the market.
Yeah, and we have to listen internally also. So I think it's been that sort of a process that really put us together, and it's only recently now we have introduced pod systems. Now everyone knows their role. We're trying to build a slightly more long-term view, which is very difficult to do in our case. We are now working on hopefully OKRs and trying to align everyone towards similar objectives, right? So the goal for me was every single person should be sort of aware of how they're contributing to the overall team and the organization. And that has to be very clear, irrespective of I'm just writing strings or I'm just sort of looking at cloud consumption somewhere. There's nothing called just. So everything is really contributing to the Uber goal that we want to achieve. So I think that clarity and communication was very important. Coming to this office was a huge, I think, a defining moment for me. I think I've started to I think all of us feel in a team. I didn't mandate anybody to come to office. I was like just completely like, I'll be in office. If you feel like you can come, and I'm suddenly like so surprised that everybody was coming to office by themselves because they wanted to really work with each other. And especially with other teams, right? Like, the days when tech team comes here, we are here just to make sure that we can meet someone, right? Because tech team especially, we have just known names. We had never really met anyone, and that was very important, and I could see that sort of camaraderie building up. So I think that's sort of how things have been evolving in product delivery, and a long way to go.
What are some of your experiences and sort of fun, interesting experiences that you have gone through, because you've had a similar experience, right? We got you when we were on fire and we were like, Akash, please come and do something about it. So what are some of the most defining moments in the 1 year of CG stint that you've had?
I think it's been two threads. One, I think also just tying it back to our work. We have been doing a lot of good work in large scale assessments. So that was one thread. And I think in the last 1 year, we've started growing into this work with states, where it's more of evidence plus action, right? We go beyond just telling them, okay, you are weak in these areas. We try to get into these, what we are now calling the academic transformation units also. So on those both fronts, I think two very different experiences. On the large scale assessments, I inherited a team. I think Chaitanya, Sujana, Archana, Aslam, like seasoned project managers. But I think one focus area I tried to build in the last 1 year with that side of things was, I think because a lot of our work is outputs, reports, dashboards, like a lot of clarity on what should the output look like before you make it, because otherwise then you go in a cycle of changes, etc. And second, I think, is because it's a delivery team, slightly playing more on the front foot and committing to things, committing to timelines, being
Same pressures,
yeah,
same expectations.
yeah.
दो दिन में कर दो, एक दिन में कर दो type of expectation.
Yeah, so I think one is pushing internal teams also, but what I felt was, I think, also in a conversation with someone external, right, being able to commit to a timeline and then see how we'll work it around. I think that shift of not being very deliberative in delivery, right, taking things on and then figuring out how you'll do it, that kind of approach. So I think what has helped is generally emotionally mature team, the one which I inherited, and I think they've taken well to the changes, and I've also taken a lot of ownership on that front, which has allowed me to also focus more energy on, building our work with states. So yeah, I think that's been the key defining moment of seeing the state go from that journey from what I was saying, right? Evidence to some action. We have done 2 large-scale assessments for them before, but they just stopped there. They just told the state that you're not doing so well. But what we saw this time was things like the education minister doing monthly meetings on data. Those were things which I could see that, this is a significant delta. So I think that was fascinating, and I think the team also, Devashish leads our work there. I think they have also been a very, very strong, I think Prateek used the word shock. You need shock absorber people who, when you front face with the government. I think they've done that well. So yeah, I think both these threads have been very interesting.
I think this is something that I picked up in the last conversation also, but in every group or in each of these groups, there have been people who've been at loggerheads with each other just because of the nature of their work. One applying pressure, the other one absorbing pressure and disseminating. But I think that happens a lot. I think a lot of people are usually at loggerheads with each other. I mean, all 4 of us are always at loggerheads. We're always fighting about things, constantly fighting about things. But that does help in sort of building things that are actually important. What are the most defining moments that you've had in the AI team, building the AI team, most interesting moments that you've had?
I think when I joined the organization, there was no AI as such. I think it was a little difficult initially to grow an AI team in an organization where people really want to see the magic of AI, but they have very difficulty in understanding that how AI works. Changing that over time was very difficult, but I think you come across, then Arnav come across, and Rishabh, all these people helped me a lot in kind of becoming the shock observers. People see ChatGPT has given the response, why you're not able to give that response? So I usually reply that try to use the ChatGPT for a day. You will realize that it's not an intelligent machine. It is a machine with a lot of data, that's it.
Right.
So I'll segue this if you don't mind, because I didn't cover the point. One of the things that I'm always looking at people in product delivery to do is to ask absolutely ridiculous questions.
Yeah.
Just never fear asking questions at the cost of feeling embarrassed. And ये मैं खुद करता हूँ ऋषभ के साथ, and that's the only way I've learned. All my learning and all my defining moments have been when I've asked a ridiculous question to Arnav or Rishabh, and they've taken a class. And I've realized it's very hard to find that. Like people can be very guarded. They want to be seen as I know this already. like, मुझे पता नहीं है, जो मुझे पता नहीं है मैं पूछूंगा, पूछ के तो पता चलेगा मुझे. So I think I just want to highlight that that's a very important thing, at least in product delivery, because we are, for external people, we are giving that solution to them. But वो solution हम नहीं सोच रहे हैं, ना हम उसके expert हैं. We are going internally, working with experts, tech, AI, product, design, everyone, right? Academic, content, and then trying to frame that solution, for the external stakeholders. And so you need to have that humility and curiosity to really be okay to embarrass yourself, but I'm going to go deep into the solution. एक बार मुझे एक थ्रेड पकड़ में आया, उस पे मैं 1000 क्वेश्चन पूछूंगा ताकि मैं उसको समझ लूं ठीक से. So I think that's something that we feel a lot in our AI interaction, quite a lot. अभी तक वो academic content में हुआ नहीं है जो मैं करना चाहता हूँ, because उस पे भी we make a lot of assumptions, sweeping, लेकिन हम पूछते नहीं ये सवाल. So I think just want to make that point also for anybody who's looking at.
What about funny requests that you guys have gotten from the ecosystem stakeholders?
2-3 requests which are, I call them, this is trend of one-click requests. So people say, I should just do one click. Everything in my state should be visible to me. Or like the teacher should do one click and everything. But I think what sometimes funny about it is, I think the focus is more on, I click something and I get this eureka moment. That sometimes happens.
That is what people expect with AI.
But on the other side, one more interesting story. We were in a day-long meeting. Someone was pitching something, and there was AI in that also. So someone from the administration made a small after the pitch made a small comment to the minister कि सर आप भरोसा मत कीजिए, आजकल AI सब बेच रहे हैं, उसके नाम पे कुछ भी बेच रहे हैं. The government is also smart that way. They know it's catching up.
एक बार टीचर ने मुझे पूछा था when we were trying to attendance, कभी करा नहीं उन्होंने, so they were asking, कहते मैडम आंखें पहचानता है कि मुंह पहचानता है? And I actually explained him. मैं कहा सर आपने कभी फ़ोन पे अपना आइडेंटिफिकेशन वाला वो करा फेस रिकॉग्निशन वाला, तो साइड भी लेता, ये साइड भी लेता, ऊपर नीचे सारा ले, तो कहते मैडम किसी और की आंखें दिखाएंगे तो करेगा जिनकी मिलती हैं हमसे, जैसे मेरी बेटी की मेरे से मिलती हैं ऐसे.
Guys, but I want to say here, I mean, in all this, yeah, I mean, we're talking lightly about these things, but think about the work that ConveGenius has cut out for itself. If our mission statement says that we want to make technology scalable, we want it to sort of like reach to the masses in a way that it helps them, think about the kind of work that we have cut out for us for the next 20 years. Because these are the kind of conversations we are having with our stakeholders. And for them to sort of come on board with everything that we're doing, it's going to take a lot of night outs and a lot of years for us to reach there.
One good thing there, though, at least I'm seeing, this is more of 4-5 year trend. These ridiculous requests ka number has reduced a lot. Like they ask for facial attendance. You tell them there will be a cost, and they say yes, we understand that. Right? That's reassuring to know. Yeah. Right? And they're like, we'll figure out the budget for that, but can you build it? Right? No, that's more of a rational conversation. So I'm also seeing that shift because I've been in the governance space for 4-5 years. I think the kind of understanding of technology 4-5 years back and now, I think slow engagement, which is why I also tell my teams that a lot of our work is educating the government also, wherever we can. Of course, we can learn from them also, but wherever we can, like telling why things are the way they are.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume that if half of our companies sort of trying to educate, the learner, or sort of working towards in service of the learner, the other half has to sort of work towards, the education of the other stakeholders in the system.